In the last section, we used the fetch helper to make a request to some arbitrary endpoint out online to fetch a list of posts. And we spoke about how whenever we got the first initial response back, we had to call response.json to produce an actual usable value out of the request, which was something that was a little bit awkward. In this section, I want to talk to you about one other little shortcoming, something that's very important for you to know about the use of fetch as well. You'll see that I replaced the code that we have here, and I'm back to console logging the response. So I'm going to flip and copy paste this over, make the request, and here's the console log response back here. I want you to take notice that on this response object, there are two properties, OK and status. So OK right here is specifically saying, was the request successfully made, or did the server return some type of error status back to us? And then with status right here, we can see clearly that it's a 200. 200 as a status means the request was successfully made and we retrieved the resource you were looking for. By convention, if the server throws an error, it will be of status 300 or above. And so that's where you see the very common status code of like 404 not found. That specifically means the server's throwing an error. It's telling us that the request was not successfully handled. So what am I getting at here? What's the point of all this? Well, here's the really weird thing where fetch diverges from the way that you might be used to using libraries like jQuery or Axios. I'm going to put on a catch statement here, and I want to console log any error that comes back to us. Okay, so just if the request fails, we would expect it to enter the rejected state, meaning the request was not successfully made. Okay, so that's the goal here. I want to see, and just to be really clear, I'm going to put in bad in all capitals. Just to be very clear that if I see the text bad, it means the request did not go as expected, okay? Okay, so I'm going to now do the big reveal here, the thing that you need to be very cautious about when using fetch. Up in the URL, I've got jsonplaceholder.blah-blah-blah.com/posts. And now on the end of posts, I'm going to put in just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay? So I have a very strong suspicion that our server is going to see this route right here, and it's going to say, whoa, posts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I've got no idea what resource you're looking for right now. I don't know what you're looking for. So I'm going to expect the server to throw a 404. That is my expectation, okay? Now, once it throws the 404, I'm going to expect that the fetch enters this catch case because the promise should be rejected, and I should see the big console log of bad on the screen. Okay, that is what I expect to have happen. So I'm going to copy this. Let's paste it in. I'm pending here, and then I get back a 404, like that clearly happened, but then the console log that I got, however, I don't see the text bad here. There's no text bad. I see just the same console log we got when we hit the then case. Now inside of there, when we console log the response, we have OK false and status of 404, which is what I expect. But the very important thing that I want to point out here is that if your server returns an error status code, so any status code above 300, it does not enter the catch case whenever we're using fetch, which is absolutely dissimilar from how every other Ajax library out there behaves. With every single other library out there, if the request fails for any reason whatsoever, the promise will enter the rejected state, in which case we expect it to go to this catch statement down here. But that is not the case with fetch. The only time in which fetch will ever hit this catch statement is if the network request just flat out failed to be made. So an example of that is if I change the URL up here, I'm going to further kind of mangle it. I'm going to say that I want to make a request to typeicode123.com. So I definitely do not expect there to be this domain in existence out there. So I'm going to expect that my browser is going to be able to say, hey, I got no idea what domain you're trying to get at. Okay, that's my expectation this time around. So I'm going to copy all this. We'll paste it, and then I immediately get back error name not resolved, and this time I see bad right here. And I got a type error, failed to fetch. So this is the only case in which fetch is ever going to hit the catch case. Fetch only hits catch when the network request flat out fails to be issued at all. If the request hits the actually hits your server and gets a failed status code, it's going to hit then, which again, I'm going to say it again, is dissimilar to how every other AJAX library out there behaves. So the big summary here, my big recommendation to you is that fetch, yes, it's fantastic. We have a nice wrapper around making AJAX requests that is native to the browser. But at the end of the day, it does not behave in the way that you really hope or expect. And so I still recommend that you as a developer continue to make use of libraries like Axios, SuperAgent, or even jQuery if you have to. Because otherwise, you're just going to have to kind of reinvent the wheel and write a lot of boilerplate code around fetch anyways to make it behave the way that you expect. So that's my big gripe about fetch. I hope that this has been illuminating on fetch. Even though it's fantastic, it still has those little shortcomings that you need to be aware of.